The following program was produced by the students of the Brian Lamb School of Communication at Purdue University.
On this edition of Fast Track News, how human rights impact our lives in different ways, and how a group of artists use their creative site to convey their interpretations of South African human rights.
While October is widely known as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, PhD students on campus have set their focus on a different kind of cancer research.
Join us now for this week's episode of Fast Track News.
Hello and welcome to another week of Fast Track Newsmagazine. I'm your host, Mike Folta.
And I'm Casey Snow. The end of summer doesn't have to mean the end of frozen yogurt. The last 3 years have been filled with planning for 3 students and has come to a successful outcome with the grand opening of a new student-run frozen yogurt shop here on campus. Fast Track reporter Macy Tetrick takes us there to get the scoop and see how the business is more than just a cup of froyo.
3, 2, 1.
Excited crowds gathered and lined out the doors of 3rd Street Market for the grand opening of Froyo Express. The business was founded by 3 current students. One reason that the frozen yogurt kiosk is unique.
I'm very excited because I know of the guy that's starting this, so I think it's really cool and I think it's a really great addition to our campus.
To attract their first customers, Froyo Express offered free samples for the first hour of business. Customers fill their cup with the desired amount of yogurt, then add toppings like granola, chocolate chips, and cashews. Even though chilly October weather is here, co-founder Henry Berkmeyer says sales in the first week exceeded their expectations. While successful entrepreneurship is an important lesson from Froyo Express, student Geraldine Berkmeyer was celebrating the opening on a more personal level.
Froyo opened, which is my brother, his friends, it's like their company.
Geraldine has watched her brother bring the business to life. Now a freshman, being at Purdue for the grand opening was especially exciting. Her brother has shown that in a campus of 40,000, one student can make a difference.
Knowing his business partners and knowing that he made his imprint on Purdue's campus makes it so I guess I have more confidence in the fact that I can leave an imprint on Purdue's campus as well.
For many students, Froyo Express might just be about grabbing yogurt between classes. But for the company's founders, Froyo will always mean much more.
I'm really proud of all of them and I'm really happy that they made their dream come true.
Macy Tetrick, Fast Track News.
Purdue has more than Froyo coming to campus. A new month brought with it a new exhibit at the Ringel Gallery, and the featured display is something we can all relate to. Margaret Merchkevich brings us to the gallery to see how these artists tell the stories of South African human rights.
Thanks guys, I'm here in Ringel Gallery in Stewart Center again talking to Erica Baum about the new Images of Human Rights exhibit. Thanks for being here, Erica.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the exhibit's about?
Yes, so the Images of Human Rights exhibition, which is on show through Saturday, October 27th. This exhibition features a portfolio from Purdue Gallery's permanent collection. This portfolio was commissioned to celebrate the South African Bill of Human Rights, which was only ratified in about 1994. So the portfolio highlights all of the different clauses, 27 clauses of the South African Bill of Rights. And each artist has done a rendering of one of those clauses. So there are actually 29 images in total, 27 of which relate directly to these different bills within the Bill of Rights. So Purdue Galleries has a collection of over 5,000 artworks. We don't often get to get them out and show them off, but this is one of those cases. So this is actually from Purdue's collection. So this is a set of prints, and it's called an edition. There were only ever 50 editions made of this particular portfolio. So for Purdue Galleries to have this portfolio is kind of big and exciting. We have portfolio number 28 of those 50. And as prints are made in editions, it creates the rarity for them. So that's why for us to have one of 50 in the entire world of these ever created, they will never be created again. That's our big exciting thing.
So Erica, can you tell me a little bit about the artists and the art that we have here today?
Sure. So each of these pieces was created by a different artist. They were chosen by the person who was putting together the portfolio, who had got the commission, and so none of them were one of those that they entered a contest and they won because of their design. They were each chosen for their specific representation. So all 9 different provinces of South Africa are represented within the artists, as well as a multitude of different cultural and geographical areas within them. So none of the artists, they don't all come from the same pool. Some of them are master printmakers, some of them are artists that work in a different medium, and some are, first-time printmakers.
So can you tell us a little bit about the art itself? Like, is it more metaphorical? Is it literal? How did the artists interpret the human rights amendments?
Yes, so each of the artists were encouraged to interpret them as they would. So they're encouraged to use their artistic interpretation, whether that be literal, metaphorical. This piece right here is a really good example of a metaphor being used in the art. It's the clause for freedom of movement and residence, and they used a turtle with its, with its home, with its shell, to represent that clause, which is, not very literal, but also quite literal. Artistic interpretation, we like that. But this one over here is for the clause of freedom of occupation, and that very literally shows, a fisherman doing his occupation. So that one took a very literal interpretation of the clause. So it was really down to each artist as to how they chose to interpret the clause, and because they come from such a vast array of backgrounds, that may have meant different things to different people.
Okay, Erica, so why did they choose printmaking?
So printmaking has a long history of being used in, protest, social justice, and social revolution movements. So they chose printmaking because it was actually used to protest the apartheid movement in South Africa, and now it was being used to celebrate the Bill of Rights. It's been used, in the American Revolution, like Ben Franklin was a printmaker, and he did a bunch of protest of, British occupation of the colonies. So when we're looking at, revolutionary movements, printmaking is often closely tied to those, because printmaking is a process where you can make multiple copies of the same image or text very quickly, very easily, and get them out, get them disseminated to your groups.
So Erica, why should people come see the Images of Human Rights exhibit?
So this exhibit is a fantastic reminder of basic human rights that are so simple yet so universal, and even so recently realized in places like South Africa. Like, they didn't get this Bill of Rights until 20 years ago. So it's a really good reminder that rights that we may take for granted are actually really hard fought for in a lot of places in the world. So I would recommend coming to see this exhibit. Maybe before you go vote, there's an early voting turnout at Crack Leadership Center on Friday, October 26th from noon to 5. Come see this piece on your political rights. Maybe get inspired to go participate in politics. But be reminded that these rights are not necessarily given unless they're fought for.
Thanks so much for being on the show again, Erica. It's always a pleasure to have you and to learn about all the great artwork that Purdue Galleries has to offer. Thanks. Back to you, Mike.
Be sure to visit the Ringgold Gallery Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Images of Human Rights exhibit closes on October 27th.
Coming up on Fast Track, a record-breaking moment in the NFL that all started at Ross Aid. But first, here's a look at early voting here on campus. Students and faculty have been lining up this week to cast ballots ahead of the November election. You can vote early all the way up until noon on the day before the election. For more information on voting in this year's election, visit tippecanoe.in.gov.
Being involved in the 3-year program at Purdue made it easier to say to myself I could get done in 3 years. The 3-year program helped save me a ton of money. In not completing my 4th year, I would save around $30,000. It will give you an advantage, if anything. Doing the 3-year program at Purdue has shown me that I have motivation to do whatever it takes to get my degree.
Welcome back to Fast Track News. Former Purdue football player Drew Brees has been the talk around campus lately after he broke an NFL all-time record. Fast Track reporter Sydney Simone Tucker lets us relive that moment.
It all started right here in Boilermaker territory, where Drew Brees started his college football career. After accomplishing head-to-head victories, Brees was drafted to play for the San Diego Chargers in 2001. But more recently, Drew Brees has been in the headlines after he broke the NFL all-time yard passing record, where he's seen most of his success playing as a New Orleans Saint.
Incredible. Brees wide open. Wide open! And Smith! What a way to do it!
After ending a phenomenal senior year of high school, Drew Brees had offers from 2 colleges. In 1997, the Texas native made a commitment to come up north and play football for Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. It wasn't until his sophomore year playing under head coach Joe Tiller where he started to showcase his skill set. His most memorable moment playing as a Boilermaker was the 4 interceptions and 64-yard touchdown pass made to Seth Morales in the game against Ohio State, an underrated history as a collegiate athlete. Brees left a legacy at Purdue. In 2009, he was inducted into Purdue's Intercollegiate Athletics Hall of Fame. Since then, Drew and his wife Brittany have donated $2 million to Purdue for a student-athlete academic center named after him. Just like he made an impact playing on the field as a Boilermaker, he's touched the lives of many fans playing as a Saint. This season, Brees has broken several personal records each week. In Week 1, he threw for more than 400 yards, winning 48-40 against Tampa. The Saints won in overtime against the Atlanta Falcons. Brees threw for 396 yards and ran for 2 more scores. That's just to name a few. And the biggest memory that will leave a mark on Saints fans forever, the Monday Night Football game against the Washington Redskins. Brees broke Peyton Manning's all-time passing yards record with a 62-yard touchdown pass to Traquan Smith in the first half. Brees' legacy continues.
Purdue PhD students are taking a new look at lung cancer, and research says it may all start and end with genetics. Fast Track Sauhan Liu visits a Purdue lab with questions that a new research might be coming close to answering.
Purdue is a well-known research-centered university, and many life-changing scientific findings are happening here on campus every year. But have you ever imagined what is a lab really look like? Where are those amazing experiments? Chen Nan Li is here showing us around the Bentley Biochemistry Research Center.
My focus of my research is in cancer genetics, and we're actually looking at those genetic factors that cause cancer in lung cancer specifically.
Li said he stepped into the field of cancer biology accidentally.
It's an interesting story. So I was not that interested in cancer biology before. When I was undergrad, I joined in a lab in microbiology because I'm so interested in that small, tiny microbials and then microbes and how they have so diverse function. And so that's why I was in a cyanobacteria lab in my undergrad. And then when I switched to PhD, the first 3 of my rotations are all in microbiology. But then unexpectedly, I chose my last one, which is in cancer biology, due to some interesting reasons. But anyway, I think the reason for the switching is that I want to challenge myself and then want to learn something new.
The challenges are still on his way, but Lee enjoys them so much.
The current situation is that we know those genes, but those large amount of those are not the causal factors. We're not causing the lung cancer development or drug resistance. So my current projects or research basically is just looking at those causal factors in lung cancer, and we have different models. Definitely we have human samples, but more importantly we have transgenic mouse models and also cell culture that we use to trying to find out which are the causal factors for the lung cancer. And the importance of finding those causal factors that we can simply treat them and then try to prevent the lung cancer development in a real human being.
He seems to have some progress in current experiment of identifying cause of lung cancers.
Personally, I think it takes a year to validate all of my targets, but because it is science, you don't know what could happen in the whole process, so I'm not sure. So I'm looking forward to it.
For Fast Track reporter Ding Danho and Xiaohan Lu.
One of the things that I really enjoy about being a professor at Purdue and being able to interact with students is that oftentimes I get emails from students several years on after they've graduated saying like, your course changed the way that I look at sport. Your course changed the way that I think about our society. My research focuses on the amount of coverage and the type of coverage of men's and women's sports on televised news and sports highlight shows. What kinds of stories are the media telling about sports, and then how does that inform and impact the way we think about gender and race? My freshman year, everything was about boys football and boys basketball. We didn't have the language or the ability to articulate or to know better that if we were supporting the boys team, we should have been supporting the girls team as well. So I was really interested in kind of learning more about the cultural aspects of why some of those gender differences might exist. The problem that I'm trying to solve is how do we address the larger inequalities within sport that relate specifically to sociocultural factors. For me, that's important. It's just exposing students to a different way of thinking about and seeing their world.
A big turnout this week for 3 big names visiting campus. Former First Lady Laura Bush and her daughters Jenna and Barbara spoke Thursday in front of hundreds of people inside the Elliott Hall of Music. Their talk was titled Women in the White House and Beyond, a conversation with Mrs. Laura W. Bush, Barbara Pierce Bush, and Jenna Bush Hager. The talk was sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and the Department of History. That's all we have for this week's episode of Fast Track News Magazine. I'm Casey Snow.
And I'm Mike Folta. Have a great week. Fingers like this.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
I'm very pensive right now.
Yeah, I mean, just as far as like thinking about stuff deep in your mind and like saying it is kind of what we're doing. But